Well, hello, this is Dr. Lemmon, and this is my chat for November. Um, so I'm wearing my um, I'm wearing a T-shirt of Wizard Island in Crater Lake, Oregon. And because I'm talking today on a concept or idea that's in my head, that's just what I'm doing this year, talking about concepts. So the first thing I'm going to talk about stories, and and this is called Wizard's Catch channel. Wizard's Catch came about not because I thought of myself as a wizard, although other people may have thought of me as a wizard. I have no idea where they were coming from, but that's okay. Um, but I was doing talks every uh, every um, every month, and a lot of people showed up at the talks. We'd have about 100 people come in, and I recorded them because a lot of people got busy and would miss a call. And so I recorded and then sent them a CD for $1 or something. So they would have a copy of it. So when I quit and closed the center, decided, okay, I'm done with this. So I decided to move on. Why, at that point, I created a website, and a wizard in web language is a template, and a catch is a storage area. So Wizard's Catch became a storage area or a blog site. And so that's where it came from. So it's a story. And so I'm wearing a story t-shirt, the Wizard Island t-shirt, which I'm sure had probably nothing to do with real wizards, that real wizards maybe exist or don't. But whether they exist or not, I'm not sure I care. So I think the challenge with labeling things, and there have been tons of books on this, is when you label something into something you already know, you bring it into all the limitations that you have. So storytelling is where we start to have an opportunity to expand those limitations. So let's get back from the beginning. All of a sudden, you get into a body and you're moving around and you're trying to make it work. So whether you want to think of as coming in a soul or something in as some incarnation or something, whatever your story is, that's fine. I'm just looking at it because I'm the wizard, right? So I look at it as coming out of a chaotic system. In other words, chaotic systems have bifurcations where you can make choices in them. Background's a little bit in mathematics, a little bit in science, a little bit in everything. So I'm just trying to get it as open of phrasing as I can get it possibly. So here you are coming into body, trying to get it to operate. What we do know is that if something doesn't work, if you move and you bump into something and maybe it hurts or maybe it just won't move, so then you pull your hand back. In the very beginning, you start to get what we call unconscious patterns stored in your body. You have to remember that we don't take pictures of things, we don't memorize things like a textbook. Everything is coded, right? A picture is coded. If you look at an image on your computer and there's a picture, but really, if you look at HTML, it's just simply, it tells you what color dot to put at what location. It's just a mathematical formula. So everything we store in our head is just a formulation. It's not a snapshot. It's not a picture. It's not a piece of data. It's not a page in a textbook. To be able to remember something for an exact piece like science or a recipe, you have to be able to review it several times because otherwise you're apt to make some mistakes. The design piece was that we get some of the details right and the rest we fill in the blanks. Our memory for past events, normal things like grandma's house, vacation, Disneyland, you'll remember a few of the facts that are keynoted in. The rest of you just make up. And when you sit with people that have had the experience with you, they'll remember things you don't remember, and you'll remember things they don't remember because you filled in the blanks. That's how the system works. Okay. So I know like everybody has different ideas. That's all fine and good. I'm just kind of referring. This is how it operates. Okay. So if it operates that way, it just means that we start to talk about something, we're looking at it and we put in everything we know. And what we don't know, we either say we don't know it or we make up something. We got in a habit in a very, very early to just make up stuff when we were a kid. Um, Let me give you a textbook example. Here, a little kid is starting to stand up and maybe take a step. So they have to stand up and reach for something. to keep their balance because they haven't trained their muscles yet to step and shift their body weight from one side to the other. So they have to reach for something. And then mom comes along and says, don't touch the oven when it's hot. Well, I'm not sure the kid has a reference for hot or reference for oven, but most certainly the child has a reference for what is a danger. Couldn't define the danger. So now you just put in, because you have a story, we now call that a subconscious caution. So there in that program is don't touch something hot like an oven. But I don't know what hot is, and I don't know what an oven is. Very confusing. So then the kid gets to walking around, and pretty soon the kid starts to reach for the oven, and oh my God, it's hot. So mom jumps up, panics, gets all this emotional energy out, grabs the child, pulls them away before they get burnt, heaven forbid. And all of a sudden the kid goes, oh, maybe this is hot, or maybe this is oven, or maybe this. So you start to see how we put pieces together. We put pieces together. And all those cautions start to get programmed in somewhere in patterns. And so that produces your unconscious and subconscious background. By the time you're 6, you got a million of them because you don't have definition for them. In life, as those things start to define, then the charge on those cautions start to diminish. Sometimes you have dreams and you work it through in a dream. Sometimes all of a sudden you find yourself that, oh, I'm afraid of dogs, or I'm afraid of heights, or I'm afraid of cold because, oh my goodness, I I got a friend of mine that said, I don't have very much hair, so I can't come visit you in wintertime because, I don't have much hair, so I get cold. I'm going, wow, I don't have much hair. Maybe I get cold too. Maybe I have a different definition of cold than he has. Um, I got a guy that came to me one time. He was espousing how he was such a profound, capable individual. He's been part of some of the he rattled off a bunch of reference organizations that he's been part of for years and years and years. He came to me because what he really wanted to do was he wanted to marry his best friend's wife. Um, and that was his request. And he's telling me how capable he is and how amazing it is and how I should be better off married to him and all of this things going on. And he says, I think she likes me and I like her, but she's married to this guy and he's my friend, but I like her. And it's like, hmm. And he wants me to help. I go, well, that's interesting. And I say, so what are you willing to contribute financially? Well, he said, I don't have much money. I've been out of work. Maybe I got $40. I said, okay. I said, I'll get a group together and for $40, we will get you married to your best friend's wife. So now you get this. This is all a story, right? He's not telling me all the details or anything in the story. So what am I have to pick up to make a decision and act on it? I have to pick up what's going on in the emotional state, what's going on, the connection between him and her and between him and him. I have to be able to read all that. So now we talk about reading. We're looking at emotional connections. In any chaotic system, when we have to then not bump into anything. As a matter of fact, probably nothing would be moving. It would just have the potential to move. So we have to constantly be mapping what is in the way of my potential right now, that it has its potential, and that would be the scheme of it. It's kind of like you've all met people that sit around and do nothing but complain all the time, right? And they do absolutely nothing but they complain. So I would say something in an all potential world would be sitting there complaining all the time about doing something, but never doing anything. And then when you come into form, you finally get to do something, which is kind of nice, but you have to learn how to do it. That's my story, right? Okay, so it's just a story. Doesn't mean it's correct. Geez, we're not trying to create a religion here. We have enough of them. So it's just a story. So when I start to look at stories, they were very useful. In the very beginning, the elder in the tribe maybe would sit down and tell a story about a danger. So everybody could learn to stay away from those big creatures down in the creek, or to not eat the red berries or whatever. The elder was probably maybe 35, 40 years old. It, we like to frame things in our context. I was kind of in a state of shock when I went to Viking country into Norway and I in a museum and I'm talking to a curator in there and he was telling me, he said, "How old do you think a Viking man is when he gets to go onto a ship?" I said, I don't know, maybe 19, 20. He says, "No, 14." 14. I said, "Yeah." You know how old he is when they threw him off the ship because he's a nuisance and he can't move fast enough and he might cause a problem. I said, "Now I have no idea." He said around 20. See, that average life expectancy for a male Viking is 21 and for a woman around 26. And I said, "Oh, wow. Uh, you know, we go back just a few years and the average life expectancy was 40, 45 years old. So we go back to tribal days, we're probably looking at 35 to 40 years old. So, the whole scope is different. When we're framing something, we talk about something, we're putting into the context of our world, not looking into the reality of that world. So if we're reading a potential, something that would get energy, like those patterns, then we're really we're building it into a story that's a long ways from true, a long ways from anything real. So stories are okay. It's beneficial. We teach with stories, right? They're very beneficial. That's what I said. So in the beginning, you would learn these things from stories, not to do this, not to do that. And you see kids learning a sport, they're learning an activity, they're learning to read, they're learning mathematics. They may not get the concepts behind that, but they're learning to work with it. They get into a job market, they learn to do the job. They may not know the concepts behind it, but they're doing the functionality of it. Um, I think that for you to grow and develop, it's really important when you get into doing something is that you spend enough time with it to start to understand how it came about, how that concept came into play. Way back in my youth, I was having some fun, so I decided to work on stained glass projects. So I'm got a job going around and finding really nice homes that could use a stained glass window. They had the money to pay for it because they had a very expensive home. So I would go in and pitch them. They would then hire me and my company to create a stained glass window for them. I would design a package. We would have a team come together. Somebody would cut the glass and grind the glass and fit. Somebody make the template. Somebody would put the tape on it. Somebody would solder it. So we had this whole process of going. We had to have installers come out and install it. So it's a building model and a building plan. I worked on each one of those aspects of it because I wanted to learn more of it. I didn't have to do that. I could have just been a salesman, but I understood that I'm making the salesman. I'm putting out an agreement with the salesman, and I don't know all the labor, all the concepts, all the details that go into it. When I say you're going to get it in a week, it really means I could do it in a week. That's what that means. If I think my crew can do it in a week and I'm trusting in that, if two people get sick, I'm in big trouble. And now I'm apologizing. Do you understand how stories work? It's just like they're not cast in stone, right? They're just not. We get talked into things through stories, but we're not really very good at being able to detect a lie, but we're extremely influenced. There's tons of papers and research done in this. They can take, come on, the good witch, the bad witch, they can take a group of people that are college students and they're paying them like $5 to come take a test. So they're waiting in a room for like a half an hour before they're allowed to go in to take this test. Test is a general information test on a topic to see where your attention goes and what would pull your attention, which way would. So what they do in some of the groups, they have a person sitting there who does not talk to anybody. Maybe they're reading a book, but they're thinking. They're thinking on the story. They're thinking about Wizard Island in Crater Lake. And that's what they're thinking about because someone gave them a picture and said, think about Crater Lake. Don't talk to anybody. Pretend you're busy reading a magazine, but think Crater Lake. So when all these people take a test and they look at places they would like to go to a vacation and stuff, all these references for Crater Lakes, for wizards, all come up in the testing. When you have another group without that seating person in the group, It doesn't show up that way. When they take the same people and test them a month later without somebody seeding it with an idea, it turns out totally different. We're influenceable, not necessarily controllable, but influenceable because potential brought the package in. It was an influence which flowed into form. My story flowed into form. Doesn't have to be right. My story flowed into form. If you want to go with the soul, then you're a soul coming into it. I don't care what word you have. But once again, we have souls. Maybe that's like a past life or whatever. But then I have souls on the bottom of my feet. And I can remember growing up when I was a kid, there was a store down the street and it said, uh, Jose, souls for healing. And it was just a cute play on words, right? Uh, so it's just that's that's the nature of stories. Stories get us to build a communication. What we really start to read or register or get affected by is somebody's attention on something, somebody's focus on something. If I say, examine this, or here's a problem, or oh my goodness, it's almost time for taxes, the end of the year is coming, or whatever is at a focus point, then that's sitting out here. And you can start to see because it's going to either have energy in it or it's going to require you put energy in it. So this human body and the experience of a human body is the experience of bringing energy into form and doing something with it. That's what the experience is. My definition, my story, right? Don't get caught in this. So if you got a different story, that's fine, right? We are interconnected, whether we like it or not. So we're influenced by everyone around us. So we join a club, and the club has a huge influence. Come on, when you were a teenager, your parents worried about you hanging out with the bad kids. I can remember hanging out with bad kids because why not? That was what the threat was. So that's what I did. It's like, it's a bad news to hang out with the bad kids. Come on, direct me to the bad kids. So we were out stealing cars, doing whatever we were doing, right? Because we were bad kids. And I remember one day we all got together to go do some heist or go steal something or do something criminal. And I walked over and they're all sitting around and they're all kind of putting a plan together. And it's just all just fantasy bullshit. And this is way before drugs and booze. We didn't have to have any drugs and booze to get crazy. We were just crazy. And I'm looking at them, and all of a sudden I could see, whoa, I could see the energy in this totally destructive. It's almost like folding in on itself. It's kind of like the feeling you get when you're walking along a trail and all of a sudden you look up and the rocks are kind of hanging out of the edge and it's like, holy shit. And you're looking down, it's 100-foot drop and you're going like, this is a scary place to hike, right? I don't know about this, right? So that's the feeling I got. I said, okay, guys, go have fun. I'm out. I'm not going. And he said, well, what do you got to do? And I'm thinking, I'm not making excuses. I'm not telling a story here. I said, I'm done. And they started to tease me a little bit. I said, no, I'm done. Bye. And I got up and I left. That's it. They all went to jail. That was the end of it. When I one time stopped by the high school I went to, and just because I was in town, I thought, well, I'll stop by the high school. It was about 50 years since I've been to the high school. And so I stopped in and I said, hey, I'm so and so, and the principal's there. She was very an old lady then, but I did kind of recognize her. She was younger, 50 years earlier, of course. So she'd been there a long time. Um, and so I said, are we going to have an anniversary? And she wasn't a principal way back then. She was just starting out as a teacher. So she was ready to retire. Um, and she said, oh my gosh, we thought you were dead. And I said, huh? She said, well, I'm looking at the records from your class. There's nobody alive that you went to school with. Hmm, they're all dead. Oh, wow. Here I am, like, oh, at 50. That was the anniversary for 50. It's like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Um, yeah, I was there during Vietnam. A lot of people died in Vietnam. And of course, a lot of women went on and got married. The last name changed, so tracking them became a bit of a challenge. Tracking me became a big challenge because my father died when I was young, my mother remarried, so the family had a different last name, but mine was different. So if they tried to send mail to me, it got returned. So obviously they would think I'm gone. They couldn't find me anywhere, right? And I've had a tendency to change my name several times in my life, just because you can. Why not? So I have done that a multitude of times. So yeah, so the name I go by right now is not the name that was on my birth certificate. Um, and so, um, my whole adventure of changing something to see what it influences. Some people get to change something because they eat healthier and they notice a change. Some people do exercise and notice a change. Uh, some people all of a sudden go take some classes and notice a change in their life. Some people create a relationship and notice a change in their life. Other people sit around and whine and complain and don't do any of the above and want to know why there's no change in their life. And the answer is pretty simple. But talking the ones that won't do anything into doing something is extremely difficult. And so I have another website called Wellness Code. It's another program that I played around with a group of other group of people, and we put it together and did some teaching on it. And then it all started kind of falling apart, and then COVID came, and it all got just retired. But the website's still up there, and I just wrote some new material for it. So it's wellnesscode.com. And so it's just an idea. It's a whole program that we put together. But, inspiring people to do change is not an easy process. All those defensive modes in there get lit up and they just don't go there. And and it's so when you start to tell stories, I'm a storyteller. So I tell a story. I'm looking at someone and I'm looking at what's going on with their emotional energy. What are they putting energy into, or what is flowing from something like a threat or intimidation or a deadline? I got to get this done. I've got to get this report done. I've got to turn this homework in. What is exchanging energy? That's what I'm reading. So call me a psychic, intuitive if you want, whatever. I'm just simply doing what every human on the planet does. They notice when somebody's got something going on. They're chewing on something, right? And so they notice that, and they might have questions about it. If they if they just pay attention for a little longer, we don't have a very long span of attention. We humans, about a minute and a half. I think right now today, probably a little lower than that, thanks to computers and phones. It's kind of scary. But here they are. They just don't have a big expanse. I'm looking at them and I'm saying, wow, you have all this energy tied up in something. You're going to go meet someone. It looks like there's someone that you're going to, because I'm just looking at what they're producing. What are they willing to invest energy in? That's what I see, right? It's like, wow, that's going on. I could translate those. I can make a story on any one of those. I could say, "Oh, I see from a past life you used to be a healer, and now you're going to go see a doctor about a healing." Blah, blah. Well, blah, 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 blah. But why? Why do all that? That's what I don't understand. But that's the way you do it. You're not wrong. It's just that you can make it simpler. So my goal in life, somewhere way back, was to start to make it simpler. I mean, I decided that I should learn to play guitar. So I started learning to play guitar. I'm really not very good at playing guitar. I started learning and I got together with, and because I was playing, I'm carrying a guitar around. All of a sudden, I'm attracted to all kinds of people that play guitars. So now I've got a circle of friends that play guitars, none of which the year before I knew. Now I haven't still been taking lessons for 5, 6 months. I'm struggling to make a chord. Come on, I'm not a guitar player. So the whole group of us sit around with our guitars, and he said we ought to have a band. So I go, okay. So I go out and I find a place to rent. I remodel it, we clean it up, we work together, and we built this structure so we can get around 40, 50 people in there so we can play. And we have parking in Orange Grove. We got this place in it's like an old barn. We put it all together. We sit down and they want to start to practice. They find out real quick that I don't listen to music. I never had I never had a car with a radio in it. So I never listened to music, never owned a radio, never listened to music. Um, for a present one time, I did get a 78 player, record player. And so I started buying some 78 classical music. So I listened to some classical music. I kind of like that. But I never listened to music, never listened to pop music. So here we're going to play on a band, and I don't know any songs. So they go, well, can you read music? I said, yeah, I can read music. That's not a problem. I can read music. And so, I'm a little slow on chords, but, I could hit the string. I could, go ding, 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 ding. I could do that. So they go, great, you're lead guitar. So I became the lead guitar, and we were a success because one of the guys in the band's girlfriend worked for a booking agency. And they're always kind of trying to find little groups that for real cheap will come in and do a 15 or 20-minute intro to a bigger band that gets booked. So we were busy. We, we didn't make much money, but we got paid. And I get out there and I just do my thing, and the rest of the guys have very strong musical skills. They've been doing it all their life. They were really good. I was not. And when finally we all separated and went our separate ways because it was all done and good, why I actually wound up giving my guitar away and never played again. And it was kind of funny. I finally married a woman that's a musician. So they're like, wow, I actually got a guitar, and I thought maybe I should start to play a little bit, but God, she's really good and I'm really bad still. So I never invested much time in it. Do you see how this is a story? You get this. You get all these points. These points are telling you about action decisions I made, not about the truth. Now we could go back and we could analyze me and say I didn't have self-confidence in playing, or you could say I was lazy and didn't want to spend the time, or you could, you know, you could do anything. You get this, it doesn't matter. It starts to look at what do we get emoted to. If you want someone to do something, you find out what does it take to emote them? What does it take to get them inspired? What does it take to get them started? Uh, I had a neighbor come over and ask me, my living room is dark and yours is not. I want to put a light in mine. I said, okay, come over and I'll show you how I fix mine to make it bright. So I showed him. And he said, I want to do it that way. I said, okay, fine. So he says, I want to do this light up here. I said, okay, fine. Um, I don't think you're going to find an electrician that will install that in the way you want it, just because of the way the code is written. It won't meet the code. He said, oh, what a bummer. But I could do it. I could put that in. This is the way it's going to look. Let me describe it to you exactly how it's going to look and what I'm going to have to do to make it go in there. It'll all work. It just isn't going to quite be code, right? So it's going to be surface mount. It's not going to be dangerous, and it'll work, but that's the way it is. And so you think on it, talk to your wife, decide what you want to do. So he decided. So I went over there and spent a couple of, he's got 2 days a week off. So in those 2 days, I worked with him and we installed the light. So yeah, so now he has a light and he's happy camper. He goes where he flips a switch, the light works. Everything's fine. He's no longer dark in his room. He can turn the light on. It's great. So when you start to look at that, you see how I had to go from answering his question, like, no, what you want cannot be done in compliance with code regulations. That's true. But creatively, it can be done. This is important because a story can either limit you to the no, it can't be done, and that would be the end of it, or it can open up a potential. That's the difference. So if you gear your stories that you share with other people to open up potential, everybody gains. If you share your stories to limit, nobody gains anything. I have a few friends that I see every now and then. I like to invite people over for dinner. So, like every other week I'll have somebody over for dinner and we'll socialize. These are people that were either old students or people I've worked with or people that have helped out down through the years. And so they live in the area and they'll come by and see. And I have people that travel and they come visit and they stay down the street somewhere and they go touring around and looking at the waterfalls and they come have dinner with us one night. So that's just kind of like, social, right? Social. And so I spend the whole evening because you can't shut me up. I just talk, talk, talk. So I tell stories. I tell stories. And then they're replying, well, wow, we've been thinking about doing that. And boy, it's amazing you told me that story because I've had to do this and this has come out. Because what am I doing? I'm looking at the active points, the things that are getting energy flowing into them. I'm responding to that. And I said, I could imagine a potential for this. Get away from I know. I could imagine potential for this. Yeah, I could imagine potential for that. So then I start telling stories. It's like, wow, because for me, when I stimulate what's the potential for that, a story shows up. And that story then leads to something else, which leads to something else, which leads to something else. By the time the meal is over, I might be able to even offer them a piece of advice or a couple of suggestions. Or maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now, they can send me an email and say, we've checked on this, this, and this, and this don't work. Do you have any other ideas? And by that time, maybe something has developed in my form of what I would call a meditation. A meditation is that I sit with a question. That's what I do. I sit with a question. I have a question. You know, I'm not looking for an answer. I'm looking for another question. And so just a little protocol I got from a philosopher called Heidegger, right? And he used to do a lot of talks and he said our goal for our talks or lectures would be 8 in the morning to 8 at night. He'd take breaks for meals, but he would go on and on. So he would take everybody's question and turn it into another question, into another question, into another question. That's how you build range. Another question, you build range. Another question, you build range. So stories are profound. They entertain, they teach, they allow us to have social interaction. Social interaction is important. If you interact with people and share stories and look for more questions, you expand for yourself and you expand for them. That's the power in stories and the power in being able to look for the question and how to expand that out into potential. That is your link into the world of potential. How could I do this? How could I fix this? Maybe I have to contact someone else and get their story and go from there, right? Um, I had one task that I had a repair job in a house and I couldn't decide about 4 or 5 ways to do it. I couldn't decide which to do. So I started getting estimates from people to come in and do it, to fix that wall. Somebody wanted 8,000, somebody wanted 12,000, somebody it's like none of that really mattered to me. I just wanted them to tell me what they were going to do for that money, because then I'm just going to decide what I'm going to do and tear it all out and do it, right? But I really wanted to see which one would be the wisest. If they have experience and they're telling me what they're going to do, it gives me a clue of like, oh, this works better than my other idea. I have had ideas that have not worked very well. I'm sure you have too. So that's the nature of stories. We tell stories, we build on stories by asking questions to find out not answers, but more questions. More questions, more range, more questions, more range, more questions, more range. Pretty soon, you've got it secured with a large range. When you're a child and you're learning to be a human and you're learning, you had to learn what ovens were, what hot was, not to cross the street, to do what you're told occasionally. You understand when someone says to a child, sit there, young man or young lady, and don't move or else, without any other information, is a death threat. So psychics like to call those death pictures, or I call them an unconscious program. The kid sitting there saying, what does or else mean? What they going to do, kill me? Or I don't know. What is that? What's the worst thing that could happen? Here I am trying to be some potential in a body, and killing me right now would most certainly not be desirable. Not on my to-do list, right? You start to see how this we get we get short-sighted with communication. We don't have enough information to understand it, and we make mistakes. We need to get range to understand it better. I, I just got my wife for her birthday a new watch, and I'm trying to figure out how to set the thing up because I've never done one before. Is it impossible? Is it hard? No, none of those things. It's just going to have to take one step at a time and take a look at it and look at what my options are and start to go into that. It's just it. It's just, and that's the way it is with everything. If you got enough range, you start to understand it. But I know a lot of people that got projects sitting around for years and years and years. And, I've helped people move and I say, what are you saving this for? I've done the same thing myself. By the time I was done doing stained glass and decided to quit for a while, I had all kinds of frames from windows. I'd find them on a job site. They're going to throw them away. I'd get them, bring them home, sand them all down, clean them all up. That's just a wood frame. It's not rotten. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just they tore it all out and they were going to put double pane windows or something. But I can put stained glass window into that framing and put a light behind it and hang it up on the wall. And it's kind of artful. And so I was collecting those and all of a sudden I had a bunch of them. And when I moved, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm not doing glass anymore. I'm going to get rid of all this. So then I threw all that away, got rid of it all. And then when I got rid of it all, I then a friend of mine comes along because his mother died and she had glass work she did. So he gave me all her glass work. And he said, Chris, I remember you said you used to do glass work. You told me stories about that. Here, my mom died. So here's all her glass. It's like, shit. Now I got all this glass. And I quit doing glass work. So I had to get all my tools out, kind of go through my brain to remember how to do that. And I put together some stained glass windows. And so I designed a window using her pieces and put it all together and invited him over and showed him what I put in there. It's like, oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. He said, you just used what was there and created a design. Yeah, that's it. That's what I used to do. That's what I did. Like, wow, that's really interesting. What will you do one for me? No, I won't do one for you. I'm not in the business. I just did one because I'm honoring your mother. She had a passion for this. I just played off of that. I put a picture that's memorial to your mother. Um, that's it. That's it. So, do I like the concept of stained glass windows? Yeah, most certainly. I could envision putting stained glass windows in my house everywhere. I actually had ideas and sketches and notes for all of that because I could do that. And then I talked to my wife and she says, no, I don't want stained glass windows in the bedroom because it lets too much light in. It's too bright. We get up in the morning and it's too bright. I want to get curtains that darken the whole place so I can sleep longer. Well, that's a good idea. Like, yeah, what the heck? I'm retired. I don't need to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning anymore. Forget that. I'll sleep till 7 or 8. So I just threw all those patterns away too. Right? You start to see stories have to change because you change. It's not because the story's wrong or anything else. It just needs to change. All right. So I've talked long enough. The idea of stories is really very important. It's nice to share stories. We need to interconnect. Our stories get enriched by sharing them. We find out information. I love to find out that someone says, you can't do that anymore. And I get to look it up and find out what you can do and what you can't do. Wonderful, right? I'm not all that sure that fact checker is always a legitimate source of information, but it most certainly will show you the strongest bias at the time. So, and that's just normal, right? I'm in a group of friends that are all talking about their favorite beer or their favorite whiskey. And then next week I'm hanging out with a group of people that don't drink. And it's like, okay, so I have all that data I have to store over here. And then all this data I gotta. So it's almost like, what am I, two different people? No, you're many different people. In the moment that you are sitting there and interconnecting with somebody or some concept or some potential, that's who you are right then. And a little later, when you're interconnecting with a different person or a different potential or a different stream of ideas, you're now a different person. Change is really very simple. it's very normal. We think of this as really kind of solid, but the energy that puts all these pieces together, it's got a blink rate, right? Kind of like your computer monitor, it's got a blink rate. If it looks like it's blinking, that means you have to adjust the blink rate because it blinks. It's not on. Light bulbs blink, it blinks. So it's got a blink rate. Humans, at least cells and structures and electrons, have a blink rate. Uh, I used to pitch this out in lectures and people thought I was crazy. I said, no, I'm not crazy. It's a story. I want you to get an idea that you think, well, I'm overweight, so I can't do that. No, you have a blink rate. You're ready to change. So a change in structure is not going to be easy because it's structure. It doesn't move easy, right? Right? Like, moving a big refrigerator is structure. It doesn't move easy. But you can invest in it and you can start to move it and then it'll change. It's amendable because it's got a blink rate. It's not permanent. You're not a statue. You're amendable. So stories are important. How you make stories and how you interact with them has a lot to do with your responses to your friends and to life. So they're very, very important. All right. That's enough. Thank you very much for listening to my concepts. And so it's been fun. Any questions at all, please send your questions to Chris at wizardscatch.com. And it's the same as the YouTube channel. It's Wizards Catch channel. And so the Chris is spelled with two S's because why not? And I will talk to you next month.